Hello there, it's Austin. If you follow along beer news, which if you don't, that's fair, it's not usually that riveting, you might have heard that Anchor Brewing is closing down after almost 130 years. They pioneered one of the original American amber lagers, Anchor Steam. So today we're going to toast to Anchor Brewing and make our own California Common. So let's get started. We'll actually be reusing some yeast that I gathered from a cream ale batch I brewed a couple months ago, and to do that, we'll start by making a quick yeast starter. I use DME and water, boil for a little bit, and then cool it down and pitch my yeast directly into the flask. We'll let that run on a magnetic stir plate for 1 to 2 days. To start our actual brew day, we'll gather 4.8 gallons of reverse osmosis water. I'll be adjusting that with the following additions of calcium chloride, Epsom salt, and gypsum. This is a pretty balanced addition, and that's kind of in style for this beer. For the fermentables, I'll be using a mixture of the following Munich, Pilsner, and Vienna malts. Kind of an odd assortment of grains, but I was trying to use some grains that I had left over from different brews. We'll finish off the fermentables with a little bit of chocolate malt to add some color and some roasty and chocolatey flavors. Once everything is ground up, it's time to add it to the mash. Then I'll grab my big spoon and make sure everything is mixed up and all the dough balls are broken apart so that we're not missing out on any efficiency there. Then it's time to let the mash sit at 150 degrees for around 60 minutes. At that point, we'll pull it out and let the grains drain back down into the kettle. This process can take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how finely your grains are milled. At this point, usually I'll go ahead and set my kettle to boil temperatures, but if you're taking out your wort and recirculating it through the grain basket like I like to do, the 120 volt element on the Anvil Foundry has a harder time keeping up and more just kind of maintains its temperature through this stage. But 35 to 40 minutes later, when your wort is boiling, it's time for the 60-minute edition of Magnum hops. This is a bitterness edition since it's at the 60-minute mark, but it does taste like hops, so that's contributing flavor a little bit, I guess. And in the spirit of brewing steam beer, I thought I would throw on my steam condenser so that any of my neighbors walking by couldn't see the steam coming out of my house. And then at the 5-minute mark, it's time to throw in some Willamette hops before finally connecting our chiller and starting the cooling process. With our beer at a nice 70 degrees, I'll take a quick original gravity reading, and then it's time to transfer over into the fermenter. I'm fermenting this beer under pressure, so that means transferring it to my 5-gallon stainless Torpedo keg. And we'll add in our California lager yeast, which has spent the past couple days going round and round in our yeast starter. Final brew day step is adding on our spunding valve and setting it to about 14 psi, and trying not to break it while we put it on. Since we're fermenting under pressure, the fermentation temperature for this beer will be room temperature. Even though I have a glycol setup, I've found myself pretty much fermenting all of my lagers under pressure at room temperature now. It seems to be easier and seems to give really good results. So we're all about using our brains around here and developing good critical thinking and problem solving skills. Anyways, after 14 days or so of fermenting under pressure, we'll transfer the beer over to a serving keg, let it age for a couple weeks in the kegerator, and then our 4.7% California Common Tribute beer is ready to enjoy. Despite having origins in, I think, Bavaria, California Common is one of the most ancient styles that you can get over here in America, or that you could get over here in America. You might have also heard it called steam beer, and I think that name comes from Anchor actually pumping their hot wort to the roof to help it cool down outside, and people could look and see the steam coming off their building. It's a cool historical style, and this version definitely wasn't intended to be a clone of steam, but it's certainly toasty and bready. I'm also getting almost like a little smoky out of it. I'm definitely getting a little bit of bitterness and a little bit of oiliness out of the Willamette hops, but nothing too overwhelming in terms of hop flavor. I like to use round and sharp to describe beers that I'm drinking, and I think this beer is both round and sharp at the same time. Does that make it like an octagon or a hexagon or something? Visually, it never really cleared up. I've had it on tap for 4 or 5 weeks at this point, and it's a touch darker than I intended. But as a tribute beer, it's pretty tasty, and definitely a shame to see Anchor closing after all this time. So, cheers.